So today I'll be filming a video on what I think are the top 10 college football games for this coming season. So don't really pay too much attention to the order that I've got them in. It's really just about the game. So uh, I've got Georgia at Alabama as the top game this year. Not because I think that those are the top two teams, but because uh, going into last season, Georgia was supposed to have passed Alabama as the new top program in college football because they had won the last two championships and beat Alabama once after losing to them seven times in a row. And then, of course, that fell apart at 27 to 24 in Atlanta, and Georgia hadn't really earned that yet, getting to be called the top program, uh, and they were pretty much a sure thing. You saw to win a third straight national championship, and now it seems like after Nick Saban retired, Georgia's pretty much being uh, called uh, the new best program in college football, and they still haven't earned it yet. And to me, before you can say for sure that Georgia is the new best program in college football, they have to earn it on the field. Uh, and this will be an opportunity for them to do that uh, because uh, what I'm seeing on the internet is that this year's Georgia is supposed to be like 2019 LSU and 1995 Nebraska good. And I'm not saying that's wrong and that they won't be that good, but what I'm saying is I wonder if it was just Nick Saban that owned Georgia, or if Alabama just owns Georgia. Because if Georgia really is that good, then Alabama shouldn't beat them this year because they're probably going to be down, losing Nick Saban and all those really good players. So if Georgia can't beat Alabama this year, seems to me like Alabama probably does just own them. And of course, it was a really good game last year in the SEC championship, the best SEC championship I've ever seen. And it should be a good game again. Georgia does lose Brock Bowers at tight end, who is the best college tight end that I've ever seen. He'll no doubt be a top 10 draft pick next month. They will miss him. And uh, good news for Alabama is that last week, Caden Proctor, uh, an offensive lineman, uh, announced that he's coming back to Alabama after announcing a couple of months ago that he was leaving for Iowa. So Alabama should still be strong on the offensive line, but uh, Kalen DeBoer, I don't really think is going to be like Nick Saban was with defense. So that's a concern for Alabama, especially in this game, because Georgia's offense is going to be really good. Uh, and number two is Ohio State at Oregon. So uh, this game is a game of two teams that are pretty much for sure going to be in the top five this year. And Ohio State, I think, will have the best defense in the country this year. Uh, they'll have the best defensive line and the best secondary. And Oregon, I think, will have the best offense in the country this year. Mm, And this should be a really close game. Uh, but Oregon does have a good home field advantage. But Ryan Day has really put pressure on himself to uh, at least make it to the national championship this year, maybe even win it with getting all of those great players to come back and adding all of those transfers. And he also added Chip Kelly to be their offensive coordinator, who was the head coach at UCLA before now, and he's known as an offensive expert. So Ohio State's offense is going to be really good too, and that will also give Ryan Day time to uh, put equal time into both sides of the ball now that he won't be calling plays on the offense anymore. And Oregon's defense played well for the most part last year, but it did struggle both times against Washington. They couldn't stop uh, Michael Penix. So I do wonder if Oregon's defense will be able to get that many stops on Ohio State's offense because Oregon will probably score a decent amount on Ohio State just because of how good their offense is. But Ohio State's defense is going to be so good that no one on their schedule except Oregon, I don't think, will hardly be able to move the ball on them this year. And uh, Oregon's head coach Dan Lanning does make some dumb decisions at times on the fourth downs, like Lane Kiffin does at Ole Miss, and that might have cost them the first game with Washington last year. And in a game like this, he's going to have to be willing to kick field goals because it's going to be hard to get a bunch of touchdowns on Ohio State's defense. And number three, Georgia at Texas. So this is a big one because right now these are supposed to be the two best teams in the SEC this year. And it'll be a offensive expert head coach, Steve Sarkisian, against a defensive expert head coach, Kirby Smart, and uh, two of college football's best quarterbacks, who are both Heisman possibilities. Quinn Ewers from Texas and Carson Beck from Georgia, and uh, Texas will have a big home field advantage in this game, but Texas's defense should be good this year, and it was good last year, but they really struggled against Washington. They couldn't get any pressure on Michael Penix, and uh, Carson Beck is similar to Michael Penix. He's not quite as good as Penix, but he's the type of quarterback that if you can't get pressure on him, he'll eat you up. But if you can, he really struggles. So if Texas can't get pressure on him, they probably will lose. But if they can, I could really see it going either way. Because Georgia's offense is still going to be really good, even though they've got more of a defensive head coach. Mm, and number four, Michigan and Ohio State. So mm, I know this game means a lot for both places, but uh, this stuff about Ryan Day is going to get fired if he loses to Michigan again. I don't think is true. I know he's lost to Michigan 3 years in a row, but uh, he's went 11-1 the last 2 years, with that being his only loss. And in 2022, his team got blown out by Michigan and still almost won the national championship because they came about as close as they could to beating Georgia in the playoff game, and then they no doubt would have beat TCU to win the national championship. So if Ohio State goes 11-1 again with a loss to Michigan, he's not getting fired. And they're still for sure going to go to the college football playoff, even if they lose that game. Mm, mm, they'll probably get a top four spot still and get to have a game off, or at worst, the fifth spot probably. But I think that if Michigan doesn't do what I said they need to do on offense with the portal this spring, Ohio State will probably end that streak of losing to Michigan this year. Uh, and Michigan will probably still be good enough on defense to hold Ohio State into the 20s like they have the last 3 years. But Michigan's offense right now, I don't think would be able to score more than 10 points on Ohio State. Uh, and number five is Texas at Michigan. So mm, this is one that I look really forward to watching in week two. It's two of college football's best programs of all time going against each other. And I do think, though, that if Michigan doesn't add transfers, this could be like when Texas and Alabama played each other in week two of last season, where Texas went into Tuscaloosa and won by 10. I think Texas will probably go into Michigan and win by around 10 if Michigan doesn't do that. Because Alabama had an inexperienced quarterback, Jalen Milroe, and Michigan, as it is right now, is going to have a very inexperienced team, and they don't have Nick Saban like Alabama did to coach them into one of the best teams. And this new head coach that Michigan hired, that was an assistant. I'm not saying he's a bad coach or that he's going to fail at Michigan, but uh, he's a new head coach. So I don't really think that Michigan's going to get much, if any, better than when they play Texas to the end of the regular season. Mm, and if Michigan does add transfers, I don't really know who I would pick right now, but uh, if they don't, I would pick Texas. And number six is Georgia at Ole Miss. So these two teams played last year, and it was a huge blowout. 52-17 was the final score. Ole Miss's defense was horrible in that game. It's like they didn't even try. That was their worst game as a team of last season. Was when they played Georgia, uh, and they couldn't get any pressure on Carson Beck. He just ate them up and did whatever he wanted to, throwing the football. And uh, Ole Miss did, uh, uh, bring in that defensive lineman from Florida that I talked about in the transfers video, and he's a pass rusher, so we'll see if maybe that will help with that. And uh, Lane Kiffin brought in all of these transfers on defense that are really good. I think just mainly hoping that he would be able to match up with Georgia now, because it was obvious in that game that mm, mm, Georgia was just uh, way too much for Ole Miss. Ole Miss was just too overmatched. And their offense went dead too after the first quarter. So They'll have to score more than 17 though, even if their defense is a lot better to beat Georgia. Uh, and number 7 is mm, Oregon at Michigan. So this should be a pretty good one. Uh, it'll be the best offense most likely against Michigan that I think will still have one of the best defenses. But it's going to be hard for Michigan to hold uh, Oregon under 30 in this one. Mm, and I don't know if Michigan's offense will be able to even score 20 in this game. Mm, so uh, right now, looks like Oregon would probably win even at Michigan. But we'll see what Michigan does this spring. And number 8 is Texas versus Oklahoma. So this was one of the best games of last season, and it always is a really good game. It seems like so Texas uh, seemed like a better team than Oklahoma last year, but uh, Oklahoma played their best game of the year against Texas last year. They played Texas better defensively than anybody did, even better than Alabama did. Uh, mm, and it wasn't just their defense, though, that won them the game. Dylan Gabriel, who is now the quarterback at Oregon, had a really big game in that one and had nearly 400 total yards of offense. And this will be in week 6, so uh, I don't know if the new quarterback for Oklahoma, Jackson Arnold, will be ready yet at that point to play a team like Texas. But we'll see. Mm, and number 9 is Utah at Oklahoma State. So this isn't on here really because I think either one of these two teams are real possibilities to win a national championship this year. But it's on here because it's a big one for the Big 12 conference. These are right now the uh, top 2 teams they're supposed to be in the conference. And uh, uh, there is a good chance that these two teams could be playing again for the conference championship. But there also is a good chance that the loser of this game gets left out of it for a team like Kansas State. Uh, and I do think that one of these two teams will win the conference this year, and that of course means now that they'll go to the college football playoff, and mm, it's just going to be a really fun game. It's going to be two of the best coaches going against each other. Kyle Whittingham from Utah and Mike Gundy from Oklahoma State, who are both very underrated coaches in my opinion. Mm, and mm, number 10 is LSU versus USC. So this one isn't on here really because I think either one of these teams looks like a top 10 team right now. I don't, but I do feel like whoever wins this game, it'll be a step in the right direction for them. Mm, and I think it could motivate them enough to go on to have a really good season. And it kind of seems to me like the loser of this game might go on to have more of an average season. So obviously, USC is going to have to play much better on defense to uh, be a playoff team this year. But LSU is going to have to play better on defense too if they're going to be able to even be a possibility to win the SEC this year. Because in their 3 losses last year, they allowed a total of 142 points, which is terrible. That will have to get much better. And they both, of course, lose Heisman quarterbacks, and USC's Caleb Williams and LSU's Jaden Daniels, I think, will be the top two picks in the draft this year. I think Williams will go one, and then Daniels will go two. And the quarterbacks for uh, these two teams next year uh, will be the quarterbacks that played for them in the bowl games. It'll be Miller Moss for USC, I have no doubt, as well as he played in the bowl game, and then it'll be Garrett Nussmeier for LSU, taking over for Jaden Daniels at quarterback. And Miller Moss, I've not seen very many quarterbacks do as well making their first start as he did. I don't really think he's a better quarterback than Caleb Williams, but he seems like the type of quarterback that will be in the Heisman conversation this year, like all of Lincoln Riley's quarterbacks are. And I thought uh, mm, uh, Nussmeier for LSU did a pretty good job at quarterback in the bowl game. I watched most of that game. Mm, he struggled early, but later on in the game, he started to make some really good throws for them. Uh, and overall, I thought USC played better in their bowl game than LSU did because USC beat Louisville, who had won 10 games, by 14, and LSU only beat a 7-5 Wisconsin from the terrible Big Ten West division by 4 points. And mm, LSU's defense let Wisconsin score 31 on them in that game, and Wisconsin's offense was terrible last year, like uh, mm, mm, most of the Big Ten offenses were. Uh, so mm, mm, this should be a good game, and mm, that will be it with this video. And please subscribe, and thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.